You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Dave.
And I'm Shane, and we are here today to discuss the humble art of taking something that's in your game and pretending that it's something else. Wait, that's all role playing.
A little more specific.
Yeah, a bit more specific. We're talking about reskinning, where we take an existing game mechanic, game element, or something, and then say it is something else. It is this bear is a barbarian attacker, or this spell that summons ice balls actually a ray gun that redistributes heat energy in an area, or something, or this class about hunting vampires, just to scratch out vampires and add werewolves, and it's a completely different class.
Yeah, sure.
Topic that's been a little bit on my mind lately because I'm currently designing my next campaign, and it involves sort of reskinning slash combining. Is taking elements from two different Kevin Crawford RPGs. Stars Without Number, a gritty sci-fi RPG in the vein of Traveller, and Godbound, a high concept, high energy game based on Exalted.
Hmm.
Combining the two of them together, having to explain an awful lot of things in terms of nanomachines and such to explain all these weird superpowers that these space jockeys will be having.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, you've got, if I remember correctly, the default setting for Stars Out Numbers, has nanomachines and what have you in it. So,
Yeah, like it's Lost Tech. Because they're based on the similar rules chassis, I can, as long as I remember to turn the AC numbers around to something more modern, I can take pieces from here and there. And indeed, many of Mr. Crawford's RPGs are designed to be interchangeable. If I wanted a really big city, I could probably ask to borrow a friend's copy of Cities Without Number and use the cyberpunk mechanics in there as well.
hmm.
But yeah, like the entire Crawford genre is in a way a big exercise in reskinning. He took the basic format of basic D&D, the 80s classic that launched many a gaming hobbyist to into the role playing sphere, and just keep using that for different genres. And you'll, if you have a couple of them and keep reading, you'll see an awful lot of recurring ideas, mechanics he likes using, basic templates, all that is sort of as a basic thing. But because he puts in so much work on the gemming tools and the inspirational material, like the big tables of this is what a plot looks like in this genre. This is what a plot looks like in that genre, and making sure that each one has unique flavor. He's able to leverage what is often considered a very old and antiquated rule set and wring many different concepts out of it.
Yeah. What I've read of his work, it seems to work. Like he pulls it off. Yeah, no, it is also interesting to see how exactly how he leverages those rules, because the same effect mechanically can end up being explained by magic or lost tech or the eldritch science of mythos like alien species. If you're going with silent legions.
Yeah, yeah. Like the effects are made so as to be balanced or at least work with the rule set, but are reinterpreted many different ways in order to suit the genre of the game. There's a certain amount of inherent genre in any game that comes from its rule set. Like each of the games will have its own sort of vibe of, well, it's a level based game, so you're mainly thinking about progressing as your characters go through their many misadventures and going from being level one and very squishy and afraid to even be within half a mile of a laser rifle to level 8 where you're charging through armies of special ops troops taking on every alien you can see. So like reskinning can do an awful lot for a game, get you different experiences, but like you also have to remember, like once you pick a certain set of mechanics, it also does add in certain biases.
Yep, it does.
This is where an awful lot of the criticism of using reskinning, particularly for commercial products, I think a lot of it comes from that feeling of inherited genre. A lot of the D20 booms of games, where OGL Steampunk and all the different Call of Cthulhu D20 keeps coming up an awful lot. Where, yeah, you could make the monster scary in a 3.5 inspired product. You can add sanity mechanics and all of that. There's still this sense of planning for your party of investigators to get to level 20, and that has implications for what they do when they meet a Shoggoth.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the big things, complaints about those kinds of D20 boom games, or the modern equivalent of it, of course, is the 5e hack, where an awful lot of people, simply because their exposure to rule sets is 5e, and the mental gear shift to try to find other games is more effort for them than just take what I have already in this 5e rule set and rebuild it into my own product, my Star Wars 5e, my anime 5e. They try this, but that also means that you're bringing in all of. See previous episodes on the many baggages of 5e. Just the way it's built means it very much goes into that sort of power dichotomy of going from nobody to demigods over not as many levels as you think, but also just like the super robustness of the characters after level 2, the general vibe of, all right, we'll just rest up and then go ham next tomorrow. That's the solution to everyone's problems.
Yeah, like the genre assumptions make a big difference. Like only last night I was leafing through the character creation for Tales of Argosa, which is the second edition of Low Fantasy Gaming, which is something of a 5e OSR hybrid. And the designer puts a lot of notes into Tales of Argosa about his decisions, and one of them is about hit points. They start off a bit higher than you'd expect for, like, you might expect for games of that, in that vein, but generally you spend most of your career with between 20 and 30 hit points, like, once you get a few levels, because you're gaining very few hit points after level 1.
Yeah.
This means that, like, monsters become more relevant for longer. You don't need as many monsters to challenge, or enemies to challenge the party. It goes on in that vein for a while, but there's definitely a different set of assumptions there than say 5e.
Yeah, and that speaks to a deeper analysis of what your rules that you've inherited are doing. For stuff like the 3.0 D20 boom and the 5e boom, often that kind of massive overhaul of the assumptions of a game isn't possible because the provisions of the license involved say you still need to be based off the rules that D&D is working off. So a massive change is more difficult. Like, I think the Renegade Studios D&D 5e inspired games like the Power Rangers or GI Joe RPGs, I think those have some different mechanics, but they can't, like, just throw out, say, hit points or something because a lot of reasons. But yeah, like, in the effort to remain somewhat recognizable as the original game, I think these games might not have the ability to jump to what might be a more appropriate mechanic.
If you're going reskinning, there is something to be said for trying to make sure that the base assumptions of the rule set you're going with at least somewhat sync up with what you're trying to get at. There's a sword and sorcery world called World of Zoth, and there's a free player's guide for 5e. And the author makes a statement that, as far as he's concerned, 5e is fine for his vision of sword and sorcery because heroes get quite powerful. Like, heroes are very capable, for starting off, and are able to heal quickly, and that does tie into some of the genre conventions. And, like, it works for that very Conan-esque world.
Yeah. You lean into the pulp aspect of it, and that's absolutely valuable. But it is important to, like, make that kind of thing having that kind of statement of genre up front, I think can help contextualize your relationship with your mechanic. And not every game will do that. Like one of the things about 5e is people have said an awful lot about what is genre conventions and how mechanical flow goes. See our own previous episodes on this. 5e itself is very reluctant to explain itself in those kinds of terms because it resists admitting that another way of doing things exists. Having that kind of context of like, if we play in this genre, it is appropriate or inappropriate based on this, this, and this. That kind of awareness, I think, helps an awful lot with the reskinning effort. We're going on and on about big commercial products and the outcry when a D20 is even within half a mile of a beloved non-fantasy genre. You could very often get very casual reskinning just as part of a normal game. I believe was the OSR thing is just use bears for everything. This dread claw beast is just a bear that we describe differently. This drug-addled cultist is just use the stats for a bear. That maybe his AC is one higher. Or like I have my D20 post-apocalypse game. I want a final boss. Hey, let's reskin this dragon from a dragon to a radiation lizard and have them, a good old fist fight with Godzilla as the climax to your Fallout game or something. A simple reskin like this, pretty normal GM tool. Just particularly for a game like a D&D clone in the modern era where having a certain amount of monster balance is considered rather than just coming up with something whole cloth. It might be easier to take something that is the correct combat level or what have you and just use that with a few tweaks that are going to change its CR or whatever. Just to make sure that you're in the right ballpark, particularly for numbers, because some people gauge numbers very differently.
Yeah, well, again, with the assumptions baked into games.
Yeah, yeah.
A +1 means a very different thing in D&D to, say, a D100 system.
Exactly. A lot of people will be reluctant to mess around with math until they have, some good experience with the system under the belt, but they may have a wilder idea than the basic monster section in the back of the book provides them. So using an existing base as a jumping off point and just tweaking here and there, adding one cool ability or taking out one ability that you don't like or don't feel that you're comfortable tracking or everything. This is, I think, the basis of, you get people get full homebrews as well, but I think the start of that kind of thing is just tweaking a monster here or an NPC there, or swapping out a class feature from one class to another in order to make a player happier about their class, making more in line with their character. That's sort of this example of personalizing your own game to your own needs. You're not actually beholden to all rangers have swamp walk at level 5 or all dragons breathe fire or poison, not both. Ultimately, what the book says is intended for the book and the product the book is selling, whereas you're running your game or you're playing your game, and that's a you thing at the end of the day. That is a thing that you're responsible for. Therefore, taking the time to start out small by just changing a bear into some form of roly poly armadillo man, then experiment with making your own monsters from scratch. Yeah, that's a progression path. That's getting used to a system and getting used to, your GMing.
No, it can help you understand the system that bit better anyway.
Some people might worry that it might help them understand the system by breaking it by accident, although
Hands up here.
yeah, well, we all do this. Like I did something like that with my last campaign. Is I was playing again Worlds Without Number, standard D&D like affair, but I added in. I basically gave players a couple of extra powers, and those extra powers ended up really dominating their playstyle. They would rely on these extra powers way more than any of the magic items they were getting, for example.
Hmm.
And that wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting a more loot heavy game. I was expecting them to be looking for magic items that enhanced those powers, but often they would just sort of brute force with what they had. And that was an experiment that, worked in some ways and didn't work in others. And it didn't quite give the outcome I expected. It still came out with a perfectly decent outcome, but it wasn't exactly what I expected. So I sort of post analysis, I'm looking at that and saying I could have considered how things were going to change more. And also, it made me realize that the system I was using was always sort of in opposition to the magic item grind of a classic D&D, and therefore this was always very likely to happen. That's something on me, but I didn't realize until I started monkeying with mechanics that I was working with. And yeah, it's the question of, are you going to risk like TPKing your party because you gave a bear dragon breath, versus after 6 months playing, I'm realizing players are not using any of the cool magic items. I'm giving them a different vibe, I guess.
Well, I mean, a problem we've discussed before is if people's expectations aren't aligned, and how that affects their enjoyment of a game.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of the things. Is like it could go either way. Honestly, reskinning something to give a different genre, or to be able to take something from another genre and put it into your game, that could throw things off, or it could bring things back in more into line with your expectations of you and your group, depending on how it's implemented. And that, I think, is one of the things about reskinning, is like it's an experimental thing of trying to mod your genre more to the play experience you're looking for, and it's a question between who gets the most votes. Is it you and your players, or is it the game designer and what they've written up?
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to like discourage. As I say, we're all home. We're all. It's very difficult to be a constant GM and not be stealing from this and stealing from that and reskinning here and there to suit your own game. That's a very natural part of the gaming process. You want to customize your character. You want to make sure your game feels right. You want to write your rulebook to bring across your vision of how a game should be played. These are all very similar thoughts that different levels of the gaming experience are going to process differently. So it's not that we're saying that the practice is bad or anything. We're just saying that it has pitfalls, and particularly the kind of unintended pitfall of what's going to happen if I change here, what's going to happen change there. Something that, in theory, you can work out during playtesting process, but that's really only something a game designer can do. And if you're throwing in this, dragon breath bear in the middle of a campaign, you don't may not get the same opportunity to see how many party members will incinerate until you're the dice are rolling on the table. It's a certain matter of, you do these changes to get what you want, but like they happen in a game, in a context. Can't have to live with the results either way. You can get very good results, you can get very bad results, and law of unintended consequences can go in a lot of different directions.
Oh yeah. Making changes, it helps to have an understanding of the rules assumptions. If you're only familiar with one system, you might be surprised at how assumptions don't work as well in other genres or themes.
Yeah, the good example is something that has immunity to being stunned in D&D is a very niche thing. You have resistance to monks essentially, whereas if you give something immunity to being shaken in Savage Worlds, all of a sudden you have this invincible bullet absorbing cocaine monster just charging through your party, basically invincible.
Mm.
Doing one-to-one mechanical swaps between one game and another isn't always the best way to do it. As I said, this can be a very good way to learn the assumptions of your system. It's a question of, do you want to learn them in the field in the middle of what was planned to be a 3-year epic campaign, 1 to 20, and you're going to kill half your party members in session 3 because turns out they're way more flammable than they were expecting when they saw a bear with the weird smoky mouth.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is the thing about this type of experimentation or reskinning. By definition, you are messing with expectations. I don't want to go. This is a future episode idea about, should someone be able to tell the stats of a thing just by looking at it. That's a whole other.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, no. Well, let's leave that firmly aside for the moment.
But it is a thing of, what is the expectation of play, and is it vulnerable to being thrown asunder just by adding a few abilities to what's otherwise a standard monster with a standard thing. Particularly if the maybe the original numbers aren't as robust as said. It's often said that wizards semi-deliberately make the CR numbers for a dragons like a 1 or 2 lower than they should be, just to make dragons feel like more of a threat when you have a fight with them. And if you're a player naive, this is a problem I ran into an awful lot when I was running a 3.5, for example, was naively assuming that all the CR numbers were perfectly balanced and
I'm caught by that as well.
yeah. You can very easily unbalance a counter with dragon by saying, all these magic items as horde. You just like hold them in his teeth or something and use them. That makes perfect sense. And then all of a sudden, your already overstated dragon is now hip thrusting lightning bolts from all those wands he's carrying, and it's like AC is twice what it's supposed to be because you stack all those randomly rolled AC buff items.
Yeah, dragons are meant to be intelligent, generally.
Yeah, but if you were expecting to have a tough but fair encounter and you've accidentally made it 3 levels higher by adding something the GM advice and the DMG didn't really prepare you for, or you just skipped over this chapter because you're too busy rolling up on the treasure charts. And this is a problem I see a lot of is people being taken by surprise by their game when they suddenly discover there's quirks in the game that they weren't made aware of, that weren't advertised as if you change the AC number by 1 2 points, it'll have a massive impact on the chance that your party will just start rolling sevens, and all of a sudden this very normal bear turns out putting armor on a bear kind of a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're plugged into a game system, if you're like reading all the advice on Reddit, or well, maybe not Reddit, but like if you're online looking at how does this game play, what affects this, what are things to watch out for, you can get a very good awareness of the possible ramifications of doing things. But if you're just experimenting because we've had a few games of the basic set on our rules, let's get crazy now, and you discover where the wheels fall off while you're doing donuts in the minefield. I mean, we would always hope that what's a TPK or two between friends. But in the moment when GM has accidentally roasted all of your beloved characters with his weird bear, and it's just like he wasn't meant to destroy the campaign. He was just meant to be a joke about that weird forest bear.
A powerful enemy that's resistant to fire, and the party only has fire spells.
Oh, and I remember many a very intelligent wizardly character who'd painstakingly optimized all of his spells chosen for the day to make sure they're the best damaging spells, and then one half dragon troll shows up. But yeah, again, sounding very down on the whole idea of experimenting with changing stats or using something from another game or calling dragon a bear. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I think it's really good. And to be honest, an awful lot of games shaking up the expectations a bit, or even just bypassing the difficulty of prep by saying a bear is about the right toughness, and an extra fire attack will show them that, assuming that their AC will save them or whatever. That's not, shaking up your expectations is sometimes a very good thing. Just, knock the dust off a group that's gotten very complacent with the system they've had, or changes the genre assumptions. So the sudden new spice sprinkled through the game, this one adventure inside of the UFO might just shake things up if you've been finding that they're very used to their standard fantasy at this point. So it's not like this kind of reskinning, remodeling content for content inherently bad. It's just it comes with pluses and minuses.
Yeah, just as a final point, it is certainly easier to do if the assumptions, if the assumptions are the same. But games can be deceptively similar. Like versions of D&D can be have quite different assumptions baked into them. So
Yeah.
just transporting a 5e monster into third edition could have, well, I'm not actually sure what would pan out there, but
Certainly, it would have a lot less fiddly details, but also maybe a lot less utility. Certainly, all of a sudden, every demon being able to teleport and cast 3 kinds of blinding illusions might it might spice things up, but it might also really throw off your combat experience. Older edition demons were basically designed to be as annoying as possible, and maybe that's the kind of fight you're looking for. But it's not something that's advertised. It just sort of flows out of different mechanical interpretations of what's supposed to be the same creature. And also, it's almost likely that the 3.5 version does not have enough hit points to actually do anything. And one nice little assassin rogue will just backstab it and render the entire point of reskinning a little bit moot. But it's a game, again. Maybe if you've found that the regular demon from 5e is pretty boring, mix and match what you see on the older stat blocks and see if that makes things. This kind of reskinning, just for your own personal use, it is, I think, overall a noble endeavor, but not necessarily one to engage in just for its own sake. Particularly if you're in the mind for some form of commercial product. I mean, they keep releasing monster manuals for a reason. It's not like you're really going to have a real lack of official content if you really want to have different versions of monsters, many which will just seem like, the same standard melee stats with a coat of paint. Certainly, you could say there's an awful lot of giants and demons and ogres in the base 5e that people say that's just, you could probably just replace that with a bear. But yeah, spicing up your game, I think, changing things to suit what you're hoping for from your game, hardly bad things. Just you might learn quickly that your game was looser and more willing to accepting. And I will say that overall, 5e is generally more forgiving about those kinds of things. So again, assuming you're past level 1 and people don't lose their characters to stiff breeze. If you're going to be doing this heavily, it will pay to step away from the standard copy in your Dungeon Master advice or GM advice, and maybe just ask around on different forums of things like what are the hidden assumptions of your game? What can I add to the spare that will be fine for most games, and what would I add to the spare to ruin my campaign and turn my wonderful combination Star Wars and Greek mythology game? How do I destroy it? What was the quickest way to do that?
Yeah, no, I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, there are plenty of discords and subreddits and what have yous about the place.
Yeah, D20 games also have EN World, although they're branched out in various ways. But yeah, I'd say it's a little weird because one of the things is we're talking this in sort of not veterans, but in our time it was a lot more standard to go on to forum websites and discuss what would be the assumptions of a game and phenomenon of adapting game material from one to the other. I know I wasted many a college study session arguing online about how to turn Magic the Gathering spells into D&D spells and other nonsense like this. But that ecology has changed very differently. Forums with long form discussion about a game are less common, and talk is meant to be way more transitory, and you're not very rarely going to get a Reddit thread that lasts more than a couple of days. If you're less willing to dig, you'll find an awful lot more boilerplate answers where people will figure out the stuff that's true 90% of the time, regurgitated at will, which is fine for a basis, but if you're looking for a deeper analysis of what's wrong with adding this ability to this bear or giving giants 15 spell-like abilities, this kind of deeper discussion can be a little trickier. You get some people perfectly happy to give you useful custom answers, but you might also get 3 boilerplate copy-pasted arguments, and then the thread dies. It's a different informational environment, I guess, and there is still, if you go looking for it, you can still get fine discussion of conceits of your game, but it might not be as easy to find as it once was, or in depth as it once was. And some people learn by doing. If you're perfectly happy to barbecue half your party members as an experiment, learn a system and how it can be modified, more power to you. It sounds like an interesting group you've got there, folks. If you'd like to customize a response to our stuff or borrow one from some other podcast, we'd love to hear how we have too many McElroys on our podcast. You can hit us up on our social media. We have not yet made a Blue Sky account because we're lazy.
the Discord's going.
Yeah, Discord's going great. There's a quiz game that I keep meaning to update and keep forgetting all about. But some of the Discord is hopping. Certainly, we just had a discussion about labor disputes in the wargaming industry for some reason.
Look, these things happen.
Come meet us on our social media. Come join our Discord. And until then, this party's over. Thanks for listening to the Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there or record a message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server. Links in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.